Hello. It is the end of September, so I am here on LinkedIn and on YouTube. I am on 9 months of doing this live stream every single month, so I'm really excited about that because this year has been crazy. It's been crazy in a good way, but I'm glad that I've committed to doing this. I am so used to being behind the scenes that this year I was like, okay, I'm going to push myself out of my comfort zone. And it's worked. It's continued to be a thing, and I'm really excited about it. And thank you so much for being here, Ellen Michael. It was so good talking with you recently. And James, good to see you. I hope the garden has been wonderful this year. And I'm excited to hear about the harvest that you've had. Jen, good to see you, my friend. So happy that you're here. Today I wanted to talk about podcasting via live streaming. I'm really excited to dive into it with you guys and answer any questions that you have. Just so you know, if you're new around here, I'm Shelby. I'm a live stream and podcast producer. And I'm also what I like to call a content traffic cop. So I'm not making your content, but I'm helping you repurpose your content. I'm helping you to communicate your content and making sure it gets where it needs to go when it needs to get there. So that's how I like to refer to myself as. I'm also a stay-at-home mom and usually have little ones hopping in and out of my office. So I always start with sharing my wins and my fails for the month. And so if you have any, feel free to jump in the comments and let me know what yours are. For me and my son were at the park. I actually shared a different story of us at the park on my LinkedIn this week, but we go to the park a lot. And we were at the park and I peeked over the wall in between the park and the houses on the other side. And there was a man working in his garden and he had a beautiful garden and beautiful flowers. And I just said, "Hey, I love your garden." And he said, "Hey, I am leaving next week and all of this is going to go bad. Do you want some?" And I was like, "Sure." It's like a little loop. I said, I'll see you back around on the other, thinking he'd give me a couple tomatoes. He gave me the most beautiful flowers that are sitting right here on my desk, and they've made me so happy. And the reason I bring this up and why I'm sharing this story is because I think a lot of times this work that we do that isn't making us money, the garden, content, I kind of tie it into producing content online, where you think, well, that's not going to immediately correlate to more money, right? It's important because I realized this man's leaving for the week. So he wanted to get rid of his flowers. There's going to be a freeze, all of that. And I realized just how cool that was that he felt, there's not going to be any gain to him, but he wanted to share it with me. And it has made me so happy. And I think about how on LinkedIn and on these platforms, a lot of times we're like, well, what's the point of sharing? And what I realized is that you never know what that impact will have on those that you're sharing what you feel like is not a big deal with others. So for me, these flowers have made my entire day. And I just thought about it as people who share their stories on LinkedIn or on other platforms. You might think it's silly. You might think, well, does anybody really care? It's not that big of a deal. It is. Keep sharing. It brings a little joy and a little color to life. So, and then my fail of the month was sales. I've not had a lot of practice in sales, and it's a skill that I'm still learning. And I failed. I failed this month, and that's okay. It's just something that kind of sparked sparked the idea for me of communicating this a little bit better, communicating why I think live streaming is great. Most of my clients have just seen my work and they've said, "Oh, I like that. Like, I would love for you to help me." I've never had to communicate it till recently in words why I think that live streaming is the best way to produce content. And I know that that sounds a little bit, people don't like live streaming because it's live, and I understand that. But what I'm saying is that there's a reason why I think that live streaming is one of the best way to produce content. So we're going to go through that today because I'm going to share why I believe in live streaming, and I'm also going to go through the pros and cons for live streaming and how to produce the content. And then I want to hear from you, any questions or comments. Jen, you say, "I love the image of a garden." Yes, I feel like that's kind of what I'm going to be thinking of moving forward with my little corner of the internet, is that I'm here tending to the flowers. And if it makes other people happy, I'm glad. So, okay, first things first, what is live streaming good for? So, live streaming, I think, is a great way for existing podcasters to get more listeners. So, a lot of times, I don't know about you, but I'm never really scrolling on my podcast app to find more podcasts. Usually, what I'm doing is I'm hearing a clip on social media and then navigating over to the podcast app to subscribe and listen. And then, usually, if I listen to one or two, then I'm hooked and I'm listening to their podcast weekly. So, I think live streaming is great for that. I also think it's great for webinars. So, if you're launching something, if you have some sort of like course or product that you're trying to do, I think live streaming is the way to go, because I don't know if you've ever joined a webinar before where you didn't realize it was a Zoom, but I've done this before where I'm like, okay, like I'll click on this link, or maybe I think that they're going to have the camera turned off when I click on the link. And I show up and there's like 50 people with their cameras on and my camera's on, and I'm have my hair up in a bun and I'm making dinner or something. And anyway, I just kind of laugh because I think that a lot of times those webinars would be best as live streams, because then people can join when they want to. You're not having to admit the person, like with the waiting room and all of that. I also think that there is a time and place for webinars with Zoom. If you're wanting that interaction face to face and seeing people on camera, wonderful. But if you want interaction from your audience for webinars, live streaming works just as great and maybe even better, because people will show up, comment, and you can answer questions, all of that. And there's not all these random little squares on the screen and people jumping in and out. And so I think actually live streaming is a more suitable option for those webinars most of the time. And last but not least, it is for the lazy content creator. So Jen says, I'm 100% the lazy content creator. That's why I started live streaming. That's why I started live streaming, because I realized I do content all day long for other people. A lot of times my content and my ideas were just lost in my Notion board or my notes app on my phone. I wasn't producing content monthly, weekly. I wasn't producing it at all. And so what this has done for me is forced me to show up every single month to produce some sort of content. And let's see what James just said. "I don't get many people that join it while live, and been debating if we should continue it next year." Okay, versus just making a video post on YouTube. I will speak to this in a minute, James, because I understand that. Um, and I think I would love to share these numbers if it would help those of you that are joining. I have a lot of creators who have a lot of followers that I'm helping. Like, I'm talking 50 plus, 50,000 plus followers. When they post a live stream, usually they're getting about 200 people live. So, like, what's the word I'm looking for? Ratio wise, I can understand that you're like, okay, like I feel like I'm just talking, talking out there. But post broadcast, they're having 10,000, 20,000 impressions on those posts. People are engaging with it later. And I think the way that you need to shift, for me, anyways, the way that I think of live streaming is that it is helping me reach more people and also helping people connect with me in a different way than just a stagnant video post would be. So, first of all, why I think that this is couple of points as to why I think live streaming helps versus just posting like a pre-recorded video is consistency. Because I know me, and I don't know about you, but if I tell myself, okay, I'm going to record a video on the 2nd of October, the 2nd of October will come and I will be like, oh, well, I really should get to that client thing first. Oh, I'll do it later. I'll do it then. And it doesn't get posted. It doesn't get recorded. And then it's not posted. So for me, having that date on the calendar, scheduling out that broadcast helps me show up consistently. Also, the engagement on live streams versus on those static posts are much higher because you're talking with your audience. I also think that the relationships that are built when you are talking with the audience versus talking at your audience is wildly different, because nowadays it feels like everybody's just kind of screaming into the abyss, and you wonder if anybody's paying attention or listening. And truth be told, a lot of times we're not. A lot of times we're like, oh, yeah, that's cool, and keep scrolling. Whereas live streaming, when you're having conversation with people, they can ask their questions, they can connect. There's an element of connection that I don't think you get from static, or I don't even know if that's the word I want to use, from posts that are just posted versus actually being live. And then of course, accountability. When you've scheduled it, it's there, you have to show up. Just like today, I didn't get my hair done the way I wanted it to be done, but I showed up because I had to be here at 11. So I'm going to walk you through what I do with live streaming and why I think it's kind of the best of both worlds. It gets your podcast, if you're doing a podcast, out there, and how it can actually be used for multiple pieces of content. So here is my little flow chart. So you go live. So I'm live with you right now. We're talking. We have a good conversation. It's streaming to Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn all at the same time. There's 3 pieces of content. Then after I'm live, I'm downloading the audio and the video from this conversation. So after that's done, then I am going to have this cute little file with both the MP3 and the MP4, meaning I have the audio version and I have the video version. From that one piece of content, which usually for me, it takes about 20 to 30 minutes for me to produce these, or for me to hop on here and talk to you. If you have a guest, I recommend longer, probably closer to 35 to 40 minutes, because it just seems like you kind of get into it and it's just a fun conversation. So usually solo episodes, I'd say 25 to 30 minutes. That's a sweet spot. If you have a guest, 35 to 40 minutes seems to be the sweet spot from everything that I've produced. So, hey, Gabe, good to see you. We need to catch up soon. Okay. So I take that audio, the video, I download it onto my computer. From that, you can post it as a podcast, like we're talking about. And then you can take video snippets from the conversation. So just less than 1 minute is what I recommend, little sound bites from the conversation, whether it's a cool thing your guest said, which sneakily they will always repost, gets you more followers, gets you more engagement on the post. So think if you're like one of those people who's like, I don't know if it's worth it, try making content for people who show up on your show, because most people want to post more content. They don't want to do the work to create the content. So if you or your team gives them a piece that they can post on their own LinkedIn, kind of sneakily gets you on their audience's radar. So we have the podcast, we have the short videos, which again, those short videos can push to your podcast versus the live stream. And then you have written content. So while you're live, you might say something that sparks an idea for just a written post. But I'm also talking about things like graphics and carousels and blog posts and newsletters. All of that, we could take this whole live stream and create an entire newsletter, because the truth is people are consuming content differently. And I from day to day am consuming content differently. Sometimes it's easier for me to listen to a podcast on the go, and other times I'm trying to get my child to sleep and I'm scrolling, and I would rather read a newsletter about whatever the topic is. So that one live stream can produce a ton of content. A lot of my clients actually have a month plus of content just from one single conversation, 1 hour conversation. So that's kind of my soapbox as to why I think going live makes a difference, and it also helps you produce content consistently, not only live streaming, but your written, your graphics, all of that. So, again, what can this be used for? Websites, your social media, even training your team. I've seen people have great conversations and they're like, oh, I am going to share it with my team. Or I've seen people join in the comments who have been like, oh, we're trying to, implement more emotional intelligence or something. I'm going to share this with my team. So that is why I think live streaming's just amazing. So I kind of made a pros and cons list for you though, because there are cons to live streaming. I understand that, and it's not for everybody. So here's my pros: more engagement, further reach, and you're only recording it once. Versus, I know I do this when I'm recording something just me. I'm like, oh, that was weird. Oh, I said that funny. Oh, that was cringy. And I record and I record and record, and I never get that finished product. So we've already kind of gone through that. But the cons about this is you are only recording once. You get one go. If you don't say how you want to say it, if you mess up, if it's uncomfy, it's feels not great, but it's also not the end of the world, is what I have come to find out. So I did a live stream via Zoom instead of StreamYard, my trusty old StreamYard that I've used for 3 years. I was like, I'm gonna figure out the Zoom thing. It was so cringy. I hated every second of it. But watching it back, I was like, okay, it's not the end of the world. It wasn't that bad. It's fine. Another con: tech difficulties. They are real. If you are a Coffee with Kim listener, which I know a lot of you are that are here today, we had major technical difficulties yesterday and there was no saving it. And it was what it was. We're going to have to reschedule the podcast. So that is a real con. That's definitely on that list. And third would be getting guests to show up on the time that you need them to show up. So when you have a live show, especially if you have a weekly show, Jen, I know you understand this. Some people are like, well, that time doesn't work for me. And you're like, okay, well, what about the next week? What about the next week? And sometimes getting you don't have the flexibility of a regular meeting, because you're like, well, I'm live at 12, and if you can't be there, then we got to look to the next week. So it makes guests that element of it a little bit more difficult, for sure. I would definitely add that on the cons list. And yes, James, like power outages. Yeah, can't always see those coming, and there's not a lot that you could do about them. So, but it happens. And I honestly don't think anybody in our Coffee with Kim chat thought any negative feelings about that, because the truth was it happens, and everybody probably just went about their workday, and hopefully everybody's excited to have come back and see Veronica again, because we have rescheduled her. She's agreed to come back on. So it's not the end of the world. Okay, so in the last couple minutes, I just, like always, want to share a little bit more about how to versus just why. I like to share like platforms that I've used or seen work really well, just because sometimes these conversations you're like, okay, I'm all in, but how do I do it? So the how-to with live streaming, the platforms that we've used. Gabe, I know you use Restream, I think. Let me know what you think about it. I've used it a couple times. I'm still with my trusty old StreamYard. And then I know Wirecast is another one that I've heard really good things about. And all three of those stream to multiple channels. So you can go live, like I mentioned in that little flow chart, to multiple places, creating multiple live streams and content at once. I also want to point out, when you go live on all of those channels, your comments are still coming through one of these. Oh, I don't know how to other way. Anyway, one of these options. Here we go. StreamYard, Restream, Wirecast. You can see the comments from different channels. So YouTube comments will pop up, Facebook comments will pop up, all in the same place that you're talking to, which is different than, say, Instagram, where it's just the Instagram comments, and those Instagram comments get in the way. I have heard a rumor, and I'm curious if any of you have heard it that use StreamYard, that they might be adding Instagram Live, which I'm extremely excited about, because if you can connect Instagram to StreamYard, it will make all of the difference. So stay tuned on that. I'm very excited about that update. Okay, so that's the live streaming portion of it. The podcasting portion of it, in order to make your audio go to all of the nice places where people can listen to podcasts, which I just want to point out on this as well. People aren't joining live streams for the entire thing most of the time. That's not bad. You shouldn't be thinking of that as a negative, because what I think about when I am live streaming with people, they hop in halfway through the conversation usually, and they hear something they like. Usually they'll listen back to it, or if you have a podcast, they'll go over to your podcast, subscribe, find where they were or what they missed, and they'll listen to it there. So don't think of a live stream as like a podcast where they need to listen from beginning to end. Think of it more as a trailer, or you're producing the content one time live for everybody to hear and be a part of. But it's not the end of the world if people are jumping in and out. And it also gives you really good feedback, because I've had podcasts, or I've had live streams where people have dropped off at a specific time, and I go, oh, I'm going to watch that back, see what I was talking about, see how I was communicating it, and see what I can do better. But anyway, it's just, think of it as live streaming oftentimes is pointing people to different things, and the connection is a lot better with that audience that you have. So Simplecast is a podcast platform that I use every single week. Super user friendly, very easy to work with. So basically you need the audio and the show notes, and you're good to go. And a thumbnail for your podcast. So Jen says, I've heard the same reason. If you can go live from your desktop, you can go live on StreamYard. Yes. I'm so excited, hoping for the Instagram update. So anyways, Simplecast, super easy platform that I've used often. It's very easy to upload those podcasts to. And then there's some magic coding somewhere that makes them all show up on the podcast platforms, which you don't have to do anything there. Kajabi is another one that, if you are creating courses, is one that I would look into if I were you. Because I think Kajabi is kind of like a one-stop shop. Jen, I know you use it. It seems like you can use, my voice is going away. Seems like you can do a lot of things on there. So if you're constantly producing content online and doing courses and doing webinars and products like that, I would say Kajabi is definitely worth looking into. Buzzsprout, I've heard lots and lots of good things about Buzzsprout. I've tried it out. I was using it with somebody, and it was a little bit more expensive than we wanted it to be. I believe that was why we switched, but still lots of great things to say about that. Lots of people have good feedback on that. So let me know if you have any questions. If you're watching this back live, please comment and let me know if you have questions. I think to wrap this all up, if you're producing a podcast, consider live streaming it. If you are live streaming, consider making it a podcast. It's not very difficult. It can feel overwhelming at first, but it's kind of one of those things. Like, I was thinking about it this morning. It's like if you give a mouse a cookie, that's how I feel about live streaming, is like if you give a mouse a cookie. So if you live stream, then you can make a podcast. If you make a podcast, then you can repurpose your video content. If you repurpose your video content, you can make it into a newsletter, and it can kind of just snowball that way. Ellen Michael, you say, I'm curious about Kajabi. Okay, you should probably talk to Jen. Jen says, I use Kajabi because that's where my courses are. And so it's no extra to store the podcast. So yeah, I think Kajabi is pretty user-friendly. Oh, look, Jen already jumped in now. Feel free to message me. It's got pros and cons like everything else. I love that. And I want to just point out that's another reason I love live streaming, is because you're not only having conversation with who's ever on the screen like I am right now, but also in the comments. Like, I know all of you that are here today can attest to the fact that it creates fun relationships between people that probably would never connect. So I love that. And I've loved who I've been able to meet through live streaming. Leslie, good to see you. She says, I'll definitely catch the replay. Glad to be here now. I'm glad that you are too. Leslie, let me know if you have any questions. I think that this is just a great way to produce content if you're lazy, and if you are like me and need that accountability and need that, it's on the calendar, so I have to go. Even if my hair's not done, I'm still showing up. So anyway, good to see you all. Thank you for being here. I know your time is valuable. I appreciate you being here, and I hope that you have a fantastic Thursday, and I'll see you in October.